Those of you just tuning in, thanks for coming tonight. Let us know where you're watching from. Leave a comment in the comment section. Hey, Janet. Hey, Barb. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. We'll wait for folks to come on in. But thanks to you for watching tonight. Let us know where you're watching from. Put a comment in the comment section. Hey, Katie. Streaming live from North Champaign, my apartment in North Champaign. Barb's watching from downtown Champaign. John's watching from Champaign. Katie's watching from Urbana. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. Hey, Lisa Sprinkle tuning in. Thanks for watching. Those of you just tuning in, we'll get started here in just a few minutes, but let us know where you're watching from. Leave a comment in the comment section. Hey, Jill. Jill's watching from St. Joe. Hey, Kathy. Good to see you watching. Hope you're doing okay. We miss you. Jim's watching from Danville. Thanks for watching tonight. Get started here in about a minute. Benjamin watching from Oak Park. Thanks for tuning in, Benjamin. Julie and Muhammad. Thank you for tuning in, Julie. All right, we are going to go ahead and get started tonight. Again, thanks everybody for tuning in this evening. Glad to have you. My name is Pat Kane. I'm the Public Programs Visitor Services Coordinator at the Museum of the Grand Prairie, part of the Champaign County Forest Preserve District. And we are all here tonight for a fun and engaging live virtual tour of a pretty popular space on our museum campus, our one-room schoolhouse, also what used to be known as nsley Town Hall. We'll get into that in just a few moments. In just a few moments, but if you haven't done so already, for those of you just tuning in, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment in the comment section. I'm streaming live from my apartment in Champaign. You're not able to be at the museum. For those of you who do not know the Museum of the Grand Prairie, we are a cultural and natural history museum where our mission is to collect, preserve, and interpret the cultural and natural history of Champaign County in East Central Illinois. And we have been doing so since 1968, been around for 50 plus years. We're an institution accredited by the American Association of Museums, a pretty distinguished thing that we are very proud of. We work very hard for that, and glad to have you all here tonight to learn a little bit more about us and what it is that we do. We're part of the Champaign County Forest Preserve District, 6 forest preserves located within Champaign County, Illinois. We are located within the Lake of the Woods Forest Preserve. And these are some beautiful spaces where we are preserving the natural world, providing awesome recreational opportunities for everybody, especially in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic, and educating our local community on the natural world, as well as our cultural community and our cultural world. Marina's watching. Thanks for tuning in, Marina. Jimmy is watching from Rantoul. Thanks again to everybody for tuning in tonight. Before we get started with the live virtual exhibit tour, I did want to let you know about a few things that we're doing coming up in the near future, some ongoing things as well. So since we are closed, Museum of the Grand Prairie is closed currently due to the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. We are still reaching our community in a number of different ways. We're putting out a lot of digital content for you on our Facebook page here, as well as on our Twitter and Instagram pages, as well as on YouTube and Goodreads, which are new social media pages for us, trying to reach you as much as we possibly can, provide you with some awesome activities and resources during this time, whether it's different objects from our museum's collection that we tell the story of, other stories of local history, educational activities for kids, virtual exhibit tours, collaborative community events. My colleague Katie Snyder has been working with some local organizations on a virtual art show and working with the local community, so be on the lookout for that in the near future. We're putting out some fun facts and a whole bunch more. So again, feel free to follow us not only on our Facebook page, but on our Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Goodreads pages. So even though the Museum of the Grand Prairie is closed, we're doing all those other things while we're closed. Champaign County Forest Preserve District properties are open for you to explore. Again, those are some 6 beautiful forest preserves located within the county. Lake of the Woods Forest Preserve close to Mahomet. There's 2 others close to Mahomet. One is Riverbend Forest Preserve, where there's the county's largest man-made lake, Sunset Lake. Sangamon River Forest Preserve with some awesome hiking trails and a restored prairie area. Homer Lake Forest Preserve, close to Homer and St. Joe, where there is, of course, a lake, and the Homer Lake Interpretive Center. Even though that is currently closed, there's still some awesome stuff for you to do there. Middle Fork River Forest Preserve, our largest forest preserve, and also an international dark sky park for night sky viewing. And lastly, the Kickapoo Rail Trail, multi-purpose trail that is currently going from Urbana by the Urbana Walmart into St. Joe, and eventually will connect with Kickapoo State Park close to Danville. So get out and visit those if you can, but please maintain a safe social distance, because you probably will be coming in contact with the public. And we encourage you to wear those masks to protect yourself, to protect others while you're out there in Champaign County Forest Preserves. Some events coming up. We have a new weekly series called Mornings with the Museum that I host. We have special guests each week. We have a particular theme each week. On Wednesday mornings at 10 o'clock, from 10 to 10:30, we encourage you to bring your coffee and your questions, because this is a live Q&A session for us as well too. Ask us any question you want. Maybe you got some questions of local history. You want to know our thoughts on certain things, how we ponder the meaning of life, anything. Feel free to ask us those questions at Mornings with the Museum. We just had one this past Wednesday, and each Wednesday we have a theme. This Wednesday's theme was a few of our favorite things. Staff members from the Museum of the Grand Prairie and Homer Lake Interpretive Center picked out some awesome things from our museum's collection, as well as a live animal and some other live specimens as a few of our favorite things. And those videos are all saved on our Facebook page. So go to our videos tab on our Museum of the Grand Prairie Facebook page to watch any of those previous episodes of Mornings with the Museum, and tune in next Wednesday at 10 for the next edition. 1 week before we closed, the Museum of the Grand Prairie, we opened a special exhibit here in 2020 titled "How Long Must Women Wait? Women's Suffrage, Women's Rights in Champaign County." That exhibit is commemorating the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. It's a pretty prestigious anniversary this year in 2020. That exhibit talks all about the local pre-suffrage movement, the suffrage movement, and life after the suffrage movement, and talking a lot about women's rights in the 20th and 21st century. And we did have to close that, sadly, but we did do a virtual exhibit tour of it. So again, check out that on our videos tab on our Facebook page. But we're also doing some speaker series events to help bring that exhibit to life. And we have a few virtual programs coming up in just a few weeks. On May 30th, Jeannie Schultz Angel, who is a historian and director of learning and education experiences at Napier Settlement in Naperville, Illinois, will present a program live on our Facebook page called Casting a Historic Vote, Suffrage in Illinois. So again, that program is on May 30th. We got more info on our Facebook page about that event. And on June 7th, Laura Keys, who is a historian and professional first-person interpreter, will present the program History Brought to Life, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, where she will take on the role of Elizabeth Cady Stanton, well-known suffragist fighting for women to have the right to vote. And she will do that live on our Facebook page, have a live first-person interpretation. Those should be a lot of fun. Tune into those, invite your friends, bring your family members, bring the little ones, bring the big ones, bring everybody, because those are going to be some awesome events. Okay. Let's see, Gina is watching from Mansfield. Thanks for tuning in, Gina. If you haven't done so already, if you're just now tuning in, let us know where you're watching from tonight. I'm streaming live from my apartment in Champaign, Illinois. Also, share the stream. Click that share button. Share the stream so your Facebook friends can watch alongside you. This could be an awesome interactive event where you can engage with your Facebook friends at the same time, having a good time tonight on this Thursday evening. The sun is starting to poke out here in Champaign, so it's turning into quite an awesome night. Also, I encourage you to ask questions in the comment section, and I'll do my best to answer them. Let's make this fun and interactive. And I'll be asking you some questions too, so help me make this more fun and more interactive by answering some of my questions in the comments. I will let you know that there is about a 10-second delay between what I say and when it's broadcast on Facebook. So be patient and bear with me if I don't immediately answer your question because of that delay. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and get this virtual exhibit tour going. I am going to share my screen, and I'll be sharing my screen and sharing a whole bunch of awesome things for you tonight. All right, so here we have the front entrance of the Museum of the Grand Prairie. Again, this awesome institution, great place to work at, has been interpreting the cultural and natural history of Champaign County in East Central Illinois since 1968. We originally opened as the Early American Museum, and we're going to take a step inside right now to see this beautiful place. All right, so here is the entrance. Off to our right, we see the museum store, which we hope to have open soon enough when it is safe for us to open, where we have some awesome merchandise that you can purchase, especially a whole bunch of merchandise related to our new exhibit, How Long Must Women Wait? Women's Suffrage and Women's Rights in Champaign County. And look how big this place is. Look at those beautiful ceilings. The building itself is a historic artifact. People always say when they walk in, man, I didn't expect it to be this big from looking at it on the outside. There's our new exhibit, How Long Must Women Wait? Check out that virtual exhibit tour that we recorded about a month ago. There's an awesome art mural that some local middle school girls completed. Learn more about the story of that art mural on previous hosts, as well as check out a video on our YouTube page all about it. But again, look at this place. It goes off to the left, off to the right, upstairs, downstairs. We have some awesome virtual exhibit spaces that you can explore, even though we are closed. Check out our virtual exhibit tour of the Grand Prairie story that we did in March, right when this COVID-19 pandemic had started. So give that a look-see. Here's a temporary exhibit called To Serve, Remembering Champaign County in World War II. This particular exhibit within that series focuses on D-Day and local issues related to D-Day. As you can see downstairs in the basement, there's our Discovering Home exhibit. But let's venture somewhere else to go find this one-room schoolhouse on the museum campus. So we're going out the museum's back door here. I'm gonna push that door open and venture outside just south of the museum. And again, we're located within a forest preserve, and right behind us is Mayberry Gelvin Botanical Garden, and we have some awesome gardening and operations staff who take care of this beautiful place. I mean, look at these flowers just blooming here. We have oak tree right there where we do a lot of programs underneath that oak tree, beautiful big oak tree. Here's our discovery garden too, that currently master gardeners from the local extension office are planting a whole bunch of really cool things in that discovery garden, and will bloom eventually and grow eventually later in the summer. There's our beautiful magnolia tree that, as it does every spring, had some awesome flowering take place, but that is all over with. And here we're looking at Mayberry Gelvin Botanical Garden. And there is the one-room schoolhouse that we will get to. We're going to walk over there in just a few moments. But another fun fact, not too far from here, if we look out into the distance, Mayberry Gelvin Botanical Garden, I got married there just about 1 year ago, 1 year anniversary coming up on June 1st. So that's a pretty awesome thing as well, too. We'll get to that schoolhouse eventually, but let's walk more into the botanical garden. Here we got a Chinese chestnut tree, educational label there outside of that tree. Here's more of the Mayberry Gelding Botanical Garden. Got a nice breeze going here on this spring morning. This video was shot in the morning. I know it's not the morning now, but getting closer to that one-room schoolhouse. Walking closer along the path, just enjoying the outdoors. Again, if you haven't been out there, feel free to visit us, Mayberry Gelding Botanical Garden, just south of the museum space. All right, so let's go inside this one-room schoolhouse. But before we do, before this was a one-room schoolhouse, I do want to let you know that this was actually Hensley Town Hall, which was located in Hensley Township, a township that is basically somewhere between Mahomet and Champaign. Still exists today, but this was the town hall. Here's a map, township county map. As you can see, Hensley Town Hall is right here in the green, somewhat in between Mahomet and Champaign. And that's where this town hall building was located. Meetings would take place in there. Lots of local business related to the township would take place. And a man by the name of A.G. Little, who's pictured here with his wife, Florence, lived in Hensley Township and had a pretty large farm in Hensley Township. Here's some of the workers on his farm. And his grandson, Howard Little, was actually a longtime volunteer at the museum. And his grandfather's collection is a part of the Museum of the Grand Prairie's collection. And here's A.G. Little's diary, one of those pieces of the collection. And looking at the records, Howard Little was able to figure out that his grandfather, A.G. Little, whose diary this is, actually voted at Hensley Town Hall when it was operating as Hensley Town Hall all the way up until 1981, when it eventually moved to Champaign County and the Museum of the Grand Prairie campus. It moved right along Route 47 on a big truck and plopped down right there just south of the Museum of the Grand Prairie. And here we are inside, where it has been transformed into our one-room schoolhouse. This is one of our more popular spaces because as you can see, as we walk through this door, especially when we do schoolhouse programs out here, it's almost like we're taking ourselves back in time, especially with these name cards. Some of these name cards take us back in time too, like girls' names such as Zelma and Victoria. Alan is still around. There was Elmer and Abraham, some of these old-fashioned names. Each student that comes in and sits down at one of those desks, they shed their original name and they get a new 19th century name. Okay, so we're looking around here, looking at this awesome exhibit space. We're going to talk about the history of one-room schools and local education in just a few moments, looking at some of those signs. But this is a pretty awesome place. We're going to look through this window here to see where we are. There's the greenhouse that was by the Discovery Garden, but we're just south of the museum space. There's our director's office right over there. But let's get started with a schoolhouse lesson. And a schoolhouse lesson can't begin unless we ring the bell. So let's ring that bell. All right, at the beginning of each morning, much like some schools still do across the nation, we are going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge of Allegiance was a common custom that would happen at the very beginning of schoolhouse lessons each and every single day, especially in Champaign County and East Central Illinois. All right, so let's take a look into schoolhouses, one-room schools. So for about 250 years, one-room schools operated as our education system, especially here in Champaign County. And a lot of people, you know, there's different perceptions of one-room schools and schoolhouses. There's that picture of little red schoolhouses where well-behaved and eagerly students learn lessons. But then there's also other backwood institutions where we would have unruly students who would pull pranks on teachers, old rundown buildings, and old supplies that were much more poor than some urban schools around there. Barb says town halls like this often serve the double purpose as a schoolhouse. We'll touch on schoolhouses as community centers a little bit later in the tour as well. But we're going to check out you know, some of those things that I just mentioned. Some of them are true, you know, the whole Little Red Schoolhouse myth, that idea, and then also some of those traditions that we're familiar with in schoolhouses. We're going to learn a little bit more about those here in just a few moments. Here's a picture at Providence School in 1910, and this was courtesy of the Coles County Historical Society. So Coles County near Charleston, Illinois, this particular school and these school children. Check out all those kids. Check out the attire and the clothes, much different than school children in today's day and age. So let's learn a little bit more about schools. So this sign is titled Ethnicity and Education. So there's a glare right there. And I took pictures of each one of these signs without that much of a glare so we can see them a little bit better. So one-room schools, we're going to focus on one-room school education tonight, and a good portion of one-room school students were of European descent, European settlers who were settling in this area, immigrating over from the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, would call Central Illinois home, and often these children would be educated at one-room schools in rural areas, especially in rural Champaign County. Not everybody went to a one-room school, but one-room schools in Central Illinois, a lot of these individuals were of European descent. And there's a good portion in Champaign County who were also, we had a good portion of German immigrants to the area. Here is a German textbook off to the left, and this quote from Dorothy Mattis, former teacher at Carr School, says most of the families were related, with very few not being of German descent. All families at that time spoke German in the home, and the kids learned English from their brothers and sisters. Here's another look at that German textbook. So the German culture was very, very prominent, even as they were in the United States.
I was German, could not
This is
speak
oral history
English
from
when
Emma
I went
Behrman
to school.
about her
And
time.
it was right after the war. And
again, this is an oral history, Emma Behrman.
I was German, could not speak English when I went to school. And it was right after the war. And my dad used to take me to school, but I remember going there and the kids laughing and making fun of me because I couldn't speak English. Let's see, I had shortcuts going to school because they would throw rocks and stones, and it was pretty miserable. So that was how my school went. But I loved school. I went to German school 3 months out of the year. I actually went to school 12 months out of the year. And I loved going to school, believe it or not. So it was different. When I was in Rantoul at the school, I was the only German girl. So, of course, that was pretty miserable. But I learned to speak English pretty fast, and I learned to speak without an accent. And then in the summer, I got to go to my Uncle Reiner Ehler's. And they had 4 girls. But at any rate, then when I went to German school, it was all different. Then I was with my family and that was really my friends. They were really my friends. And there they called me that, in German they call it's Township. That German girl coming in to our German school, that English girl coming into our German school. So I was different in Rantoul and I was different in Flatville and at the German school there.
All right, so Emma Behrman can't catch a break there, but she was a local student going to German school and an English school. Let us know, do you know of anybody, let me know in the comments, do you know anybody that attended a one-room school? Did you attend a one-room school? Let me know in the comments section. All right, so moving on to this next sign, we're going to focus a little bit more about the schoolhouses, the structures themselves. So there is that popular image of the Little Red Schoolhouse, but not every schoolhouse was a Little Red Schoolhouse. That was an overused stereotype. A lot of them were going to be painted white, looking much more like, common houses or even like log cabins using lumber or even sod to help construct these schoolhouses. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some schoolhouses here in just a few moments. Jill Robbins said she attended Clark School, also a one-room school, stood on the northwest corner of Homer Lake Forest Preserve. That's pretty cool. Anybody else attend a one-room school? This is a pretty awesome map. So remember that township map that I showed you earlier to show you where Hensley Township was? Well, we're going to check out this interactive map here. I'm going to visit the website here because this map, I want to look a little bit more in detail at this map. So here we have a one-room schools map of Champaign County, and this was made in about 1915, 1916. In Champaign County, there were about 200 one-room schools. Here is that county map, and each one of those yellow tags is a one-room school. What I'll do at the end of this is I will post links to each one of these if you want to interact with this on your own, but this is a pretty awesome resource. Let's zoom in here and see if we can check out some of these one-room schools in their towns. Jill Robbins said she went to Clark School. Let's see if we can find that close to Homer, she said. We see Clark School anywhere. There's Mayview School. We have Willard School outside of Urbana, Loudon School, Peters School. This is a really awesome interactive map piece that shows each one of the one-room schools. Again, there were over 200 one-room schools in Champaign County at one point. But check out this awesome interactive map. I'm going to post this link again. This is on digital collections at the Illinois Library. Learn a little bit more about these one-room schools. Another thing I wanted to point out is another awesome digital collection. So the Champaign County Historical Archives at the Urbana Free Library, they have a really cool Flickr page, and this is their digital collection on their Flickr page. And they have these albums on their Flickr page that have photos from their collection, but they've been scanned in, and you can actually view them anywhere in the world as long as you have an internet connection. So, you know, if we look at these albums here, on their Flickr page, they have a whole bunch of different types of photos. Like we can look at women's groups of Champaign County, Chanute postcards of Chanute Air Force Base and Rantoul, University of Illinois postcards, Campus Town, historic theaters of Champaign County, grocers of yesterday, grain elevators, Champaign Park District history. Hey, Champaign County Forest Preserves, there's 15 photos in there. And there's also a really awesome album of one-room schools that the folks at the Champaign County Historical Archives were kind enough to give me permission to use some of these photos. So we will see them in our presentation, but check out this album of one-room schools in Champaign County. There's some really awesome pictures in here that we're going to take a look at here in just a few moments. Okay, I'm going to go back to the video here, but let's check out some of these one-room schools, check out some of those structures. You know, some of the 200 schools that were in Champaign County here in East Central Illinois. Here's West Urbana's first schoolhouse. It's not the best image, but this image, you know, this school started right around 1855, middle of the 19th century. Here's another one, Pleasant Valley School in the Ogden Township. And this picture was taken in 1895. Look at that class size. What is that, like a dozen kids or so? Here's Kentucky School in Rantoul Township. We got about, what is that? It's 8 kids. And look at the building back there. It doesn't look so much like a Little Red Schoolhouse, even though this one does. Liberty School in South Homer Township from right about 1910. This is made of brick, more close to that Little Red Schoolhouse stereotype. Here's Carr School in Ogden. Again, this looks much like a house, you know, some houses that we still have today. And this picture was taken in the 1940s. Here's Greenwood School in Coles County. I just used this one because it was a color photo, so we can get a look at what it looked like. And those schoolhouses, a lot of them had those towers up top, those towers. And this schoolhouse is from Maine, but I chose this one because I had a hard time finding a Champaign County school, a local school photo that was any different. I chose this one for a particular reason. Can anybody tell me in the comments how this school, this Division 9 schoolhouse, differs from the other schools that we saw? What do you think? How does that look different? There is a short delay, so I'll give you a few moments to answer. What's different about this schoolhouse? Look all around. What do we see? Something that is unique about this place. I'll give you a hint. They're green. Aisha says 2 doors. Yeah, there's 2 doors here. Why were there 2 doors? Well, often cases, you know, schoolhouses would have 2 doors. Jimmy said 2 doors too. Jill says 2 doors. 2 doors, why? Well, girls would go in one door, boys would go in another. In our schoolhouse, as you noticed, we had rows of seats where boys would sit on one side, girls would sit on another, separated by boys and girls in one-room schools. All right, so we checked out some awesome structures there, some one-room schools in Champaign County, those structures. Let's learn a little bit more about school days. What would happen in school days? So a lot of times, many children would start their day super early, working at home, doing some chores, maybe, going to get wood, getting water for the home, making breakfast for the family, working on the farm oftentimes. But then they would go to school. And each school schedule varied, but they would walk to school super early. We have a photo over here to the left where children are walking to school in the snow. And then it also says down there, we always open the morning either by giving the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag or singing the Star Spangled Banner or My Country 'Tis of Thee, much like we just did the Pledge of Allegiance when we first started. Some kids would ride to school in a buggy. Anna Williams said I was taken to school in a storm cab, which was a buggy with side curtains. So some students were lucky enough to do that. And they would learn, a number of different subjects. We'll get into the curriculum here in just a few moments. But they would also have recess. I'll talk about recess in a few moments too, but that was a big piece of the school day. Well, of course, we always had apple butter and things like that. We had sandwiches and we always had some kind of cake or cookies. Then we had an apple orchard. So we took an apple and had plenty to eat. Lunchtime, still very important in one-room schools. Here's a Norman Rockwell illustration. Norman Rockwell and similar artists, I think, help paint the image of what we see as early education. Here's students working in the school days. This is Allen School in Summer Township in 1938. Focusing on the students here, we've got some boys, some girls. Here's Cook School. We got a large class here. And look at the ages of the students. We have some young students there in the front, and we got some students tall in the back. It's hard to even tell which one is the teacher because they're about the same size. Claudine's tuned in. Hey, Claudine, good to see you. Campbell School in Sydney Township. Look at those kids in their overalls. Those boys probably have to go home and work on the farm as well, too. Here's an illustration from Ralph Caldecott in the 1870s called Children Leaving School. And that boy in the front is holding a hoop and stick. Hoop and stick, a prominent recess activity, and one that we do at our schoolhouse lessons during our summer schoolhouse program. Here's a video that was shot in our Mayberry Gelman Botanical Garden. There's Sandy Lou, Miss Sandy Lou, who is teaching these kids the game of hoops and sticks. And it's not as easy as it looks. Some of these kids are really good at it, but it takes a lot of practice. You're hitting a hoop with a stick and making it roll to your partner almost like a relay race. And that's some tough stuff. But recess, a very important part of the school day. So what would be taught? What subjects would be taught in one-room schools in early 19th century, early 20th century education? So a lot of same things we still have today, but there was a basic curriculum most often of reading, writing, and arithmetic. Also a whole bunch of study of the Bible. And then a little bit later on, schools would include subjects such as history, geography, and even newer subjects to them, such as science, art, and health. Education was seen as very important, not just to people looking to continue their education past the one-room school, maybe go to high school, go to college eventually, but blacksmiths, farmers, and storekeepers, artisans, still needed a basic grasp of arithmetic and reading and be able to write in order to conduct their business. So even if you were going to go practice a trade, still needed to have some education. Molly, this quote from a Liberty School student in 1947 says, I also remember that the books which we use in our classes were traded or sold among the families in the school. The families were always happy to find used books at a lower cost. So textbooks were a little different. They're very expensive in today's day and age, but textbooks will be passed around if you had the pleasure of having a textbook, because standardized textbooks were very rare in the 19th century. One book that we use in our lessons is known as McGuffey's Fifth Eclectic Reader. There's a whole bunch of different levels. There's McGuffey's Third, First, Second, Fourth Eclectic Reader. But I wanted to show you another resource here that, again, I'm going to share with you after this video. But this is from archive.org. Somebody scanned in McGuffey's Fifth Eclectic Reader, and I wanted to take a look at a few pages just to see what a reading book would look like in one of these one-room schools in the 19th century and early 20th century. So let's flip the pages here, go through the table of contents. We got an introduction. I want to get into some actual, maybe some actual real stories as well, and I'll zoom in here in just a few moments. But again, we're looking at McGuffey's fifth eclectic reader, the fifth level. Here's a story. Let's zoom in here so we get a little bit better picture. So this, it's called The Good Reader. It is told of Frederick the Great, King of Prussia, that as he was seated one day in his private room, a written petition was brought to him with the request that it should be immediately read. The king had just returned from hunting, and the glare of the sun or some other cause had so dazzled his eyes that he found it difficult to make out a single word of the writing. His private secretary happened to be absent, and the soldier who brought the petition could not read. There was a page or favorite boy servant waiting in the hall, and upon him the king called. The page was the son of one of the noblemen of the court, but proved to be a very poor reader. And again, this is from McGuffey's fifth eclectic reader, a little excerpt from The Good Reader, a story within this. And this book here, as we can see, was published originally in 1879. Again, and I'll share this link with you if you want to check out this full digital version of this 352-page book, as it says in there. All right, let's get back to our video. This is an interesting piece. So I just talked about how textbooks, weren't, everybody didn't have textbooks. One thing you would do is create a cipher book, which is like this book. So think of when you were in school, when you had to take notes in certain classes, took down a whole bunch of notes in some spiral notebooks. Well, that's basically the concept here. You are creating your own textbook that you would keep, for the rest of your life. This is one ciphering book within our museum's collection that somebody has kept and added to from the years 1800 to 1825. And I think in here it says multiplication in one section, compound multiplication off to the left, I think subtraction. So this would be your reference. You had to make your own textbook. Imagine making your own textbook. Anybody do something similar like this when you were going up in school? Let us know in the comments. Have you ever seen a cipher book before? This is a pretty interesting piece within our collection. So make your own textbook, basically. All right, what else do we got here? Here's a certificate of perfect attendance. This certifies that Hi Aiden had attended school during the month ending October 1st, 1907, without a loss of time from absence or tardiness, and therefore merits this certificate. Perfect attendance award for Mr. Aiden there. Anybody ever get a perfect attendance award? Let me know in the comments. That was given at Union School. All right, so some other chores, students would often have to help out at the one-room school. One chore would be going to get the water so you could have something to drink. No water fountains around. You go to like the local stream, creek spot nearby, get a little bit of water, and then so your classmates could use that ladle to ladle up some water. Definitely couldn't do something like that in today's COVID-19 pandemic. So let's assign Elmer here to go get us some water for the rest of the class so we can have something. Here we got what looks like the teacher's lunch pail, a metal lunch pail. We got the stick, the pointing stick, and sometimes this stick would be used, if some kids weren't performing as well as they should. We'll get to that in a few moments. But here's a desk. I think this desk is from the Hensley Town Hall because some of these cubby holes here are related. Barb said she got a perfect attendance award in second grade. Good for you, Barb. I never once got a perfect attendance award. I got real close, but so yeah, here we got this desk. Poll tax, it says there, overseer's list. I think this came with the building when it moved to the museum in 1981. Close that up here. But this, looks pretty similar to what a teacher's desk would look like, maybe. In a one-room schoolhouse, here's a spot where you can keep your papers, your books, number of other things. Here's another resource to use. Check out this map from 1907. This map of the United States. Pretty cool piece. This would be high tech in 1907. This topographical map. It's a little bumpy, as you can see. Let's see if we can zoom in on Central Illinois. There's Champaign, even labeled on this map in 1907. Champaign County on the map. Yeah, as we can see here, copyright 1907. So we use this in some of our lessons. Teach a little bit about geography. History, some of our summer in the schoolhouse lessons and schoolhouse lessons that field trip students participate in a whole bunch as well. This schoolhouse has seen thousands of kids. Has anybody ever come to this schoolhouse before for a schoolhouse lesson? Got any memories of a schoolhouse lesson? Let us know in the comments. Another chore would be to go get some firewood to keep this place warm in the wintertime. There's this stove that would keep this one-room school or Hensley Town Hall nice and warm. All right, so this sign talks a little bit about in 1845 at the top, it says Catherine Beecher declared that men would not be persuaded to return to the humble, unhonored toils of the schoolroom and its miserly reward. It is a woman who is to come at this emergency and meet the demand. Woman whom experience and testing has shown to be the best, as well as the cheapest guardian and teacher of childhood in the school, as well as in the nursery. Teaching in rural one-room schools, Beecher believed, was a better alternative for women than factory work, shopping, or gossiping. So Catherine Beecher has a strong opinion that women should be the one teaching. Not everybody agreed with that. I like this quote down here from U.J. Hoffman in 1910. It says, "The greatest need is competent and well-trained teachers. At the root of this evil are low wages. Even $40 per month for 8 months in the year is barely enough for a person to live on, even in the most economical way, and many get less and for a shorter term." That was in 1910. Here we are in 2020. Do you think teachers still get paid what they deserve? It's funny how some things change and some things stay the same. All right, moving on. Here is another Norman Rockwell illustration called The Scholar, looking at this school marm who is a male. It's a man. Been a little boy there. This says few holiday traditions were observed in one-room schools in the first half of the 19th century. Christmas was not yet widely an important holiday. It hadn't been quite commercialized yet. But one tradition that would happen is students at Christmas time on Christmas Day, they would do what's called barring out the teacher. They would lock the teacher out of the room, almost like a prank, like a school prank. And it looks like this teacher here may be locked out and getting some snowballs hurled at him. So that is one thing that students would do on Christmas, is bar out their students or bar out their teacher as a Christmas Day prank to celebrate that lovely holiday. Anybody got a cool story in the comments of a school prank you did? When I was in 8th grade, on April Fool's Day, I brought a fake tarantula spider with fishing line tied to it, kept it in my pocket until passing period one time at J.W. Ader Junior High School. And as this hallways filled with students, I pulled that tarantula out with about 20 feet of fishing line, one end of it attached to my hand, and put the tarantula on the floor and drug it through the hallway. And people thought it was real for a second. But my algebra teacher was not the happiest about it. She actually stomped on it and then figured out that wasn't a real spider. It was attached to fishing line that was then attached to my hand. And I guess we'll say that she wasn't too happy about it. But that was one school prank that I pulled. You got any good stories of a school prank? Let us know in the comments section. I am now a good boy. Okay, moving on. See what else we can learn about local schools, local education. All right, so here's, we've got a chalkboard that we use. 2 + 2 = the mysterious sum. But we use this during schoolhouse lessons all the time. This is an interactive and living space. We're bringing history to life all the time in this one-room schoolhouse. And hopefully we can do that in the future at once all this COVID-19 coronavirus stuff is over with. Bring students back. Here is Miss Sandy Lou Newport, former teacher, Unit 4 schools for a long time, who is one of our school marms. We have a handful of school marms who come and bring history to life and teach 19th century arithmetic, reading, writing, and history lessons to students in the schoolhouse. Here's a photo from one of our Summer in the Schoolhouse lessons from last year. And I'll tell you that we don't provide costumes to these students. These students have so much fun going back in time in history that they actually get dressed up and come to this free program themselves. Here's another boy. Looks like he's answering some questions on the slate there. Here's a girl. Again, she wore that herself. These kids get just as much in character as Miss Sandy Lou Newport does. And our schoolhouse lessons aren't complete without some recess as well. Here's Sandy Lou teaching. a boy how to bow, a proper way to address your school marm when you walk in first thing in the morning. And here's Sandy Lou lining up the kids, letting them know what they're about to do once they go into the schoolhouse for a schoolhouse lesson. And we're going to get a little a snippet of the introduction of Sandy Lou and these students walking in the schoolhouse. Got parents piling in, the kids are in there.
They just are going in, right?
We got one straggler student coming in there, dressed up too. Again, once you walk through that door of the schoolhouse, it's strange. It's like as soon as you walk through that door, it takes people back in time. Children says bowing will work for social distancing reasons. That's a good idea. No more handshakes. Let's just bow instead.
They're like 4 sizes too big. He left his shoes at Cindy's house last night.
Right, let's get situated. Let's take a look inside. See what's going on.
Good morning, boys and girls. Good morning, Miss Sandy.
Notice how the girls curtsy.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
So be on the lookout for some virtual schoolhouse lessons that we're going to do this summer, because we can't do summer in the schoolhouse in person, unfortunately, this year. But hopefully we'll be able to do it in person next year. But we're going to do some virtual schoolhouse lessons this summer, and those are going to happen in July. So stay tuned on our Facebook page for some of those virtual lessons. Let's look at the corner of the room. There's this stool here. This stool is there in case any of these students are bad boys or bad girls. They might have to sit on that stool to get the dunce cap. We're about halfway through. Let's make sure all of our students are paying attention. So this girl seems to be paying attention. She's doing what she's supposed to. Henry's being a good boy. This boy's being good. This girl is doing what she's supposed to be doing. But what about Abraham? Abraham might be falling asleep. Let's wake him up. Abraham might have to sit on the dunce chair with the dunce cap. All right, moving on. What about teachers? I was a high school history and social studies teacher before I came to the museum. But what about teachers in one-room schools? So for the first half of the 19th century, men were going to be schoolmasters, dominated the teaching profession, mostly men. But by the 1850s, the situation was changing. Start to see more women being school teachers, especially in these one-room schools. Women, were preferred school teachers, especially for younger children. Society viewed them as a natural bridge between mothers at home and the classroom, but they were still held to high standards. See a lot more women in one-room schools than men, but still some men in one-room schools, and sometimes we have male schoolmasters that come and teach. Here's another Norman Rockwell cover, Saturday Evening Post, Knowledge is Power. Again, we see a woman teacher there teaching a little boy, a little redheaded boy. Teachers would go to school at what were known as normal schools. And the first normal school opened up in 1857 at Illinois State Normal University, eventually becoming what we know as Illinois State University now. That's where I went to school, where I got a degree in history and social science education. But that was where teachers would go to these normal schools, because before normal schools, here's a photo of Old Main at ISU. Before normal schools, teachers wouldn't really receive too much of a formal education. Be kind of self-taught. There might be some reading groups within the area. Here's a scholarship that Patricia Cheesebro of our Cheesebro Blacksmith Shop and our blacksmith exhibit, she received to go to Illinois State Normal University, to go to that normal school. That's why the town of Normal is called Normal. That's where ISU is located. Normal was a teaching school. A normal school was a teaching school. Here's Eastern Illinois Normal School Lake Students swimming. There's Old Main, the castle in the back for any Eastern Illinois grads who are watching. But that also started as a normal school. Dorothy Mattis, former teacher at Carr School in 1938, she says, the school board offered me a contract in the spring, which was to pay 85 bucks a month and also agreed to pay the $10 yearly teacher's pension. 85 bucks a month. Could you survive on 85 bucks a month? All right, moving on. This one is titled Hickory Sticks and Willow Whips. So much like Abraham had to go to the dunce chair because he wasn't performing, we're going to talk a little bit about discipline here. So this is from Champaign County School Superintendent Report. It says, whip children if need be, but do not wither their souls with scorn and contempt. Some teachers call children fools, blockheads, idiots, liars, or thieves. The spirits of many children have been crushed by such words. Teachers fail to govern the school because they cannot govern their own tongues or tempers. So yes, severe discipline happened. Yes, corporal punishment happened to unruly students. But other things would happen. They would split the kids up. Some kids would have to hold their arms out. Here's another Tom Sawyer illustration. Quote at the bottom says, the master's arm performed until it was tired and the stock of switches totally diminished. But as I was a teacher, and just like it was in when I was teaching and in one-room schools, most kids are good kids. I think sometimes people think about one-room schools and we think of that super stern, super strict teacher, but that wasn't always the case. Where teachers would be mean and smack every desk with a switch. Here's a few quotes here, although talking about discipline a little bit, but I still think most kids are good kids. Bella Kinzer said, discipline never became a real problem for me because I was a big country girl and I knew the parents of the students. George Sylvester, former student, says, we had to do a whole page of arithmetic problems or we would get a licking if we didn't have them done. Liberty School student said that it sat next to the Wabash Railroad. The boys in school used to throw rocks at the locomotives, which brought visits to school by the railroad personnel. It soon stopped. So discipline, not from the teacher there, but from the railroad workers. Last one at the bottom says, I tell the children how to conduct themselves, and if they refuse to comply, I thrash them like thunder. So yes, some corporal punishment happened. There probably were some stern teachers out there. And of course, corporal punishment doesn't happen in today's day and age, but I guess it did happen a little bit in some of those one-room schools. But I think the myth of it is much larger than what it actually was. All right, so this photo here says the older children who attended school in winter were as old as 20, bigger, stronger, and perhaps older than the teacher. These students were at times distinct discipline problems. Several 16 to 18-year-old boys who put live mice or small snakes in the teacher's desk drawer. She was unable to control these boys. So that's quite the prank. Some of these photos are ones we've already seen, but I wanted you to focus on the teacher here. Look at the teacher. We have a teacher there. She seems to have her kids well in order. This teacher here at Antioch School in Colfax Township, she seems to be helping some of those students, those boys at the front bench. Maybe those boys were being a little unruly. Who knows? These kids look like they're doing what they're supposed to, but I chose this one because look off to the right, the teacher there. The teacher who's standing up helping a student over there, pointing at a desk. It's a male teacher in 1938, an uncommon thing. Here's a teacher at Equity School in Champaign Township in 1938. Again, these awesome photos come from the Champaign County Historical Archives. Check out that Flickr page where you can look at all these photos as long as you want. Here's Campbell School in Sydney Township. Look at the teacher there. She seems to have all these kids doing what they're supposed to as well. Here's Locust Grove School. I chose this because look at the teacher there in the middle and look at the boys off to her left. The boys are taller than she is. And I chose this one too because I'm going to pause it here for a second, but let me know in the comment section, which one's the teacher? Which one do you think is the teacher? This one's kind of hard. Where do you see the teacher? Not as easy as it seems, but that teacher is right there in the middle, in the back. This one, fourth from the left. Looking at this at first glance, it's pretty difficult to find the teacher, but if you explore it a little bit more, and I know the identification names on this photo, the teacher is fourth from the left, this woman back here. But much like today, still some kids run into some growth spurts, some changes in their lives where they become bigger than some of these young teachers. Aisha said middle back. Marina said the tallest woman in the middle, tall by just an inch, probably taller by just an inch. Okay, so Barb said earlier that oftentimes schools would serve multi-purposes. Schools are often community centers because we have one-room schools. Oftentimes would be probably one of the bigger buildings within a township, within a community. So they could hold social functions, political events, hold elections like Hensley Town Hall. A.G. Little actually voted at Hensley Town Hall when it was there, as I mentioned earlier. Weddings, funerals could be held in schools. Christmas programs and 8th grade graduation drew large attendance numbers, much like they still do in 21st century. Christmas program, big time of the year. Went to my niece's program last year. Still a big deal. Graduation, a big deal too. I like this quote down here. The last day of school in the spring was a picnic with all the parents helping the children celebrate their passing to another grade. It reminds me of when I was in elementary school. We had what was called field day, where it'd just be a huge celebration on the last day of school. We'd have all this food, we'd play all these games, be the best day of the year. Anybody have a field day on their last day of school when they were a student or even teaching? There's that Hensley Town Hall sign. This is in the back of the schoolhouse. Got some artifacts and some information on Hensley Town Hall when it was operating from the 1890s to the 1980s as an actual township building. There's a letter with some information that you can check out. And last sign in here, focusing on consolidation, the end of an era. So consolidation still happening in 2020, where some schools are closing, school districts are becoming larger, schools are becoming larger, and that happened between the 1920s and the 1950s, most often in central Illinois, where a lot of these one-room schools would have to shut their doors, and students would see the end of one-room schools and attended larger schools farther from their home. Couldn't walk to their one-room schools anymore. They'd be going to much larger schools, or the public school system started to take shape around that time. In the latter half of the 19th century, reformers called for schools divided by grades and the use of standardized text. We saw a lot of those students who looked like they were about 5, ranging all the way up to about the age of like 13. One-room schools, you would go to school with everybody in your area, no matter your age, you'd all be in class together. If you were 5 years old, you'd be in class with a tall 13-year-old. If you were 10 years old, you may go to school with somebody who's 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, older than you. Everybody went to school all at the same time, all grades together, but that changed with consolidation. Here's another photo from Champaign County Historical Archives. This is the abandoned Mound Snip School in Ayers Township. This photo was taken about 1980. We can see some of the parts of the building falling down, some of the windows broken out. Here's Blackberry School. That was in Urbana Township. This photo was taken in the 1960s or so. And again, the windows are broken out. Some of the slats are falling off. So the end of an era. Little schools are gone. So I did want to read, to close out our program tonight, this poem. I really like this poem from Stella Tremble in Charleston, Illinois. It's called Goodbye Little Country School. A nice little end to our virtual tour tonight. It goes. All grades were knit in one big family with common interests, base of unity. On Friday afternoons, the spelling bee, the ball game bases stretched from tree to tree. A greater progress by the young was made through hearing lessons of a higher grade. The teacher was a mother, nurse, and guide who loved her pupils and put self aside. Through minor chores, responsibility was taught in this one-room democracy. Cooperation, love, and brotherhood, though pigtails were quite often dipped in ink. And there was no hot water nor a sink, yet children in this one room felt at home and learned respect for knowledge in a tome. Hardships and sacrifice were overcome, and laughter never was at a minimum. The peace of strolling down a country lane to country school will not be known again. The song of lark by noisy bus is stilled, no time to note the nest that robins built. Consolidation took the school away that held traditions of a distant day, where once we played, the spiders spin their lace. Our country school is a deserted place. Goodbye, little schoolhouse, your work is done. In your fast race with time, progress has won. Goodbye, little country schools. The end of one-room schools comes with the consolidation area. Public schools, large public schools start to grow. I went to Rantoul schools, went to Northview Elementary, J.W. Ader, Rantoul Township School. These large school buildings, public school system came about after one-room schools were consolidated. School districts became larger. One-room schools started to fade away. Some of them are still out there. Some of those buildings still exist. So see if you can check some out if there's still some out there. And come and visit us too when we open again. The Schoolhouse is going to come back to life once the museum is able to fully reopen. And we would love for you to come to some of our Schoolhouse programs and check out the space for yourself. Did want to give a big shout out, big thank you to all of these places for providing some of the photos here. Photo credits, Booth Library Archives at Eastern Illinois University, Champaign County Historical Archives, Coles County Historical Society, the Muhammad Citizen, New York Public Library, University Archives at Illinois State University, in the town of Wells, Maine. That's where I got all of these photos from. Again, I'll put those links in that I shared, some of those awesome websites with you all. I'll put those in the comment section of this Facebook post, this Facebook video. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all your comments. If you got any questions about one-room schools, the history of one-room schools in Champaign County, you want to know something, got a question about something else, send us a Facebook message, leave us a comment right here on this video, and hope to see you at some of our future virtual programs. And soon enough, the museum will be back open, but we're going to wait until it's safe. So enjoy the rest of your night. It's a beautiful night here in Champaign. Sun is setting. Hope you all have a good Memorial Day weekend. Have as much fun as you can. Thanks again.